Imagine you move from a place where you lived all your life. Imagine you move and you leave all your children and wife. Starting all over again, but no one you know is around. Well, they didn't have to imagine. They built it up from the ground. How does it sound? Not easy because it isn't. Could have praised them, but it didn't. But the Ray Bond, that's a winner. And they ran straight to the finish. You get to know them up close and personal. Wait, just give me a minute. Welcome to the front row. Can I get a drum roll? Intentional. We may be immigrants, but we are still intentional. We are dependable. It's just that set the bar.
Welcome to the Intentional Immigrants podcast and YouTube channel. Here we seek to inspire, motivate, and encourage immigrants and others, of course, so that they can be empowered to live their best lives. My name is Yolanda Jack. It has been a crazy week because last Tuesday, at this time, there was smoke all around. It was so thick with smoke. And now we had rain over the weekend, so persons were able to come back to Fort McMurray. So yes, I live in Fort McMurray, and we have had fires for we had a fire in 2016. That's a big fire where you had almost 90,000 people leaving the community, and it's one of the largest evacuations in Canadian history. So that was traumatic, and it was a little bit stressful at the time. And then last week, when we saw the smoke, we smelled the smoke, we saw the smoke again, it brought back a lot of memories for a lot of people. In fact, some communities, I think there were about 4 or 5 communities that had to evacuate. So the Friday before, we were on evacuation alert. So let me just lay the groundwork. The Friday before, we were on evacuation alert, the entire Wood Buffalo, Fort McMurray area. And then, so we went into the weekend being on the alert, them telling us that there was a wildfire that was out of control. We need to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. So that's what an evacuation alert is. It is where you have to get your stuff together so that you can leave. You don't have time to pack when you need to evacuate. So the alert comes first, and then the order comes second. The order is where you need to leave. This is not where you leave. Anyway, so we went to work as usual. We had our normal day on Tuesday. However, by midday, thereabout, we were told that some communities had to leave. I didn't have to leave because I wasn't impacted. I wasn't nearer to where the fire was. But some communities had to leave. And for some people, that was traumatic. And it is bringing them back into what they had experienced in 2016. So today, I want to talk about the importance of having an emergency kit. We all know that there's an increase in the number of natural disasters that's taking place around the world. So whether that's fire, whether that's flood, hurricanes, you're looking at tornadoes, you're looking at earthquakes, there are always natural disasters taking place in some place, somewhere in the world. So what's the importance of having an emergency kit? And what should be included in said emergency kit? So let's dive into that in a little bit. But just before we do, if you're new here, thanks for joining. Be sure to subscribe, share, and like. The Intentional Immigrants podcast can be found on Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify. For YouTube, it can be found on our YouTube channel. And of course, there's a website, www.intentionalimmigrants.com. So that's where you can find me. I have some blog posts there on the website that you can read. And I try to provide insight, help from my experiences as well as others who have lived as to provide insights for persons who are going through difficult times, whether you're a new immigrant or whether you are just feeling down and out. You're not an immigrant, but you are going through a period of time that you're feeling down and out and you need some encouragement. So that's the purpose of the podcast and YouTube channel, as well as the blog post. So I do try to provide information so that persons can know their next steps. And hopefully, the next steps will help them to achieve their dreams. All right, so let's look at an emergency kit. So the first thing I want to tell you is be calm. The first thing you need for the emergency kit is your head. So do not be caught up in the panic that's happening around you. Yes, it's going to be stressful. I can't tell you that it's not. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be uncertain, but do not be caught up in all that's happening around you. Manage your emotions. Be calm because your brain needs to function. This is the time that your brain needs to function. And if you're swirling in emotions, then it's not going to function at its best. In fact, you may end up making a bad emotional decision. So that's the first thing I want to tell you. Be calm. Whatever you're going through, whatever the situation is, whatever the natural disaster is, be calm is the first step. Because if you're not calm, then you're going to make decisions that are not necessarily in your best interest. All right, the second thing I want to talk to you about is having food. So you need to make sure that you have your canned goods and your non-perishable food items. So that's going to be like your energy bars, your dried fruits and nuts. And of course, if you're going to be taking along canned things or tin things, make sure you have a manual can opener. The second thing I want to talk to you about is water. Water is life, as they say. So you want to make sure that you have enough water, about 4 liters of water per person per day. All right, so you'll need your water. The next thing I want to make sure you have all your chargers for all your electronics, including your cell phones. So make sure you have your phone chargers, or you could also make sure you pack a power bank as well. Make sure you have some form of radio to listen to so that you can stay in touch, or battery-powered radio, so that you can be aware of what's happening. Make sure you have battery-powered radio so that you can be aware of what's happening around you. So you need your communication. Also, you'll need a flashlight with extra batteries. Now, a flashlight is important. Regardless of the form of natural disaster you're having, usually there's some form of power outage. So you need light. You need to be able to see what you are doing. So you need to have your flashlight. In the case of the Caribbean, which is prone to having hurricanes, then you want to make sure that you have your kerosene lamp and you also have your kerosene oil. So get that ready so that whenever the hurricane blows, you can have your light to see, because usually the power lines are down. All right, so that is 3. That's where we are, 3, about that. All right, the other thing I want to mention is the importance of having your first aid kit and your medications. So make sure that you have a good supply of medications, so especially if you're dependent on your medication. In addition, you want to make sure you have like antiseptic wipes, bandages, and gauze. Another thing you want to make sure you have is your personal toiletries and items. So of course, make sure you pack clothes, in other words, along with your personal toiletries. So your toothpaste, toothbrush, etc., etc., etc. In addition, don't forget your glasses or your contact lens. It's always a good idea to have an additional pair as well. You want to make sure that you have your documents. Now, I'll spend a little bit of time on this because it's important. During the fire of 2016, persons lost their important documents. Mind you, when the fire happened, we all had to leave same time. We didn't get any warning. It's not like now where you get an evacuation alert first and then you get the order. No. The city was different parts of the city were burning in 2016 and it just escalated real fast. So that's what happened in terms of the fire. The fire actually jumped a river and damaged another community and all of that, and it just spread. And of course, in Canada, the houses are not made of concrete. So it's very easy for the fire to spread because the material is flammable. So make sure you have your important documents, your mortgage papers, your birth certificates, all your certificates, school certificates, diploma, degree, all of your certificates that you have. Make sure you have those. Make sure you have. The question I want you to ask yourself is, how difficult would it be to replace this document? And using that as a guide, you will decide what is important. What is it that you absolutely need to have? Your passports are important because if you need to travel, you need to have those. And those may take a while to get back. So you want to make sure you have your passport, birth certificates, your mortgage papers, insurance papers, everything that it will make your life easier. Because remember, you're already in an emotional turmoil, so you want to make your life as easy as possible. All right, in addition to your important documents, I want to remind you about your photo albums. Now, there are some photos that, depending on your age, of course, that are not digitized. Okay, so these photos were taken before the advent of digital cameras. And as such, you want to make sure that you have your printed photos. So grab your photo albums and put them with your important documents so that you don't forget them when you have to move. These are memories that you cannot afford to lose. Of course, you'll remember the event, but your memory will fail over time. But when you have your photos, these you can pass down to the younger generation and say, oh, there's your grandma, or there's your father, or this is when we bought our first house. Whatever the memory is, just secure your photo albums because you can't replace those. As I talk about insurance, as tenants, one thing I want you to look into is having tenant insurance. Now, in the fire of 2016, you're probably tired of hearing this, but in the fire of 2016, a lot of tenants did not have tenant insurance. So we had to go south. And south is going to Edmonton, Calgary, thereabout. And that's 4.5 hours from here to there. Because people did not have tenant insurance, we were displaced. We were out of our homes for anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks. We returned 6 weeks later. So can you imagine having to live out of a hotel or live out of an Airbnb, or even if you're living with other people, if you're lucky enough to have friends and family, you're living with other people, you need to be able to maintain yourself. So even though they are providing lodging for you, you need to be able to maintain yourself. So this is where the insurance comes into play, because when you have tenant insurance, yes, it protects your valuables. So having tenant insurance is important because it protects whatever you have in the house. You can't take your furniture with you. It's not moving, you're moving. So you need to have your furniture and all of that with you at home. So you need them to be protected. So if your valuables are lost in a fire or in a flood or in an earthquake, you want to make sure that you're able to recoup as best as possible. In addition, some persons or some insurance companies do provide cash for you to live while you are displaced from your home. So check with your insurance company, see what is covered under your policy, and make the best decision for you and your family. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is the importance of cash. Want to talk about is the importance of having cash and an emergency saving. Now, growing up, you may have been told that you need to have money for a rainy day. That's your emergency saving. When you are evacuated, you need to be able to access your cash. So you need to be able to have emergency saving. That is critical, 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 critical. You also need to make sure that your money, you're able to access your money. So you need to have some cash on you. When you're evacuated, yes, you can use your credit card, depending on where you go. You'll be able to use your credit card. But it means that you are more likely to go into debt. So let's take what happened last week. So last Tuesday, persons were evacuated. Some persons were evacuated. It means that they had to go to a hotel and they would have spent Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday was when the evacuation order was lifted or canceled. All right. So some persons returned on Saturday, some persons returned on Sunday. So you basically look at having to live out of pocket for the last 5 to 6 days. Now that's hard. If you're to put in accommodation, so let's put in a hotel cost or an Airbnb cost, you're looking at over $100 per night. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you'll need to buy food because remember, you're not at home where you can cook and all of that. So you'll need to buy food. Even if you're cooking food at the Airbnb, you also need to buy the raw material to cook. So you want to make sure that you have an emergency saving. This is critical. An emergency saving is a cushion that you'll use to when life throws things at you, because life throws everything at you. So when life throws things at you, you want to be able to manage and live and survive and even thrive in whatever you're going through. All right. So those are our tips for today. I hope it has been helpful. And if you have not started putting aside a little suitcase or a little bag with just your emergency clothes, make sure you have you can have like a little folder with all your important documents, something that's easy to grab and go. In addition, you want to make sure that you have your bag packed and ready so that if there is an emergency, you can still survive and you're not as badly impacted as you might have been if you were not prepared. So be prepared because life will throw things at you. And that's the nature. We're living in a sin-cursed earth. All right. So for Fort McMurray, the Lord sent rain, and some persons were able to come back, as I said before. From Saturday, the order was lifted. Okay. All right. So In addition, you want to make sure that you have your garbage bags. So pack some garbage bags as well. Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Immigrants podcast and YouTube channel. Thank you to the following person who made today's episode possible: Xavier Anderson for providing music. As always, I'm your host, Yolanda Jack, reminding you, he who watches the wind will not sow. He who watches the clouds will not reap. Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 4. You were born for greatness. Step out into your greatness so that mankind can benefit from you being here. So long until next time.
Intentional. We may be immigrants, but we are still intentional.